Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Merchant's Quest, which is a 1 to 6 player board game that takes 45 to 60 minutes to play on average. This one is launching on Kickstarter on the 21st of May 2023, and all of the components I'm showing you today are of a prototype copy, so there may be some changes between the version you're seeing here and the final copy. But before I get started on my review of Merchant's Quest, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so during the setup of Merchant's Quest, you are going to randomize all of these hexes on the board. And you can see there are a ton of these divided up into 3 different terrain types. You've got the lowlands, which where you're going to start with your wagon to work through. You're going to go into the mountains, and then you're going to go into the highlands, and hopefully end up in the castle. On one side of the board you have the round tracker, and depending on the player count you will have more or fewer rounds. So you can see here in a 1 or 2 player game you'll play 25 rounds, but in a 5 to 6 player game you'll only play 15. Now you also have a bunch of additional resources such as these gems. You've got the actual resources themselves such as the bread and the fish and the potions and etc. And you've got the money. You've also got a few decks of cards such as these quests. You've got these items from the wagons, and you also have some dice. So there's 3 different dice. You've got the gem die, you've got the movement die, and you also have the resource die. And each player will also get given a number of these little huts that will be used on the board as the game goes on, and you'll see why. Each player will also get given a resource guide to show how much the resources can be bought for and sold for in the different locations on the map. Now, during setup, you're going to get given a number of these quests that will give you some bonus points, and I should say that the overall kind of objective of the game is to make as much money as you can when the game ends. So you can see here that I've been given these quests here. I think you only start with 3, but I've given 4 out here just to show you some examples. So if I travel through a cave, I'll get an additional 3 coins. If I sell a wheat at a village, I'll get 3 bronze. If I'm the first player to enter the castle, I'll get 3 bronze. Or if I carry 4 different resources at the same time, I'll get 3 bronze. So after deciding the starting spot for your wagon, on each player's turn, you are going to roll the movement die. So, for example, I'll roll it like this. I've rolled a 4, so that means I can move 4 hexes on the board. So it is a true roll and move style game. Now, when you move onto a hex, you're going to reveal what's on it. So let's just say I go here for 1. You can see most of the tiles will look like this, where it's just a simple pathway and a thoroughfare to move on to the next tile. You can go back on yourself, you can go sideways, or of course you can progress throughout the map. So let's keep on pushing. Let's go for 2 movement, 3 movement here. And finally, let's go for movement, and hopefully we'll find something. And we have found something here. We found a village. So when you find a village, you are going to roll the resource die like so. I've rolled the water symbol. Therefore, I can refer to my resource guide and buy as much water as I like, bearing in mind that I can only ever hold up to 5 of a particular resource at any time. So I could say spend 10 coins in order to get 5 water into my supply and hold it there with the aim of trying to sell it down the road. So as I said, if I end up selling it to a village in the highlands and that particular village wants that resource, then I'm going to get some profit there. And if I bring it all the way to the castle, I'll get some additional profit. Now, something else that's important to say is that things like villages will end your turn if you decide to engage with that tile. So, if this was the first tile that I moved on to and I decided to buy some resources, then that will end my turn immediately. But let's take a look at some of the other hexes that you may find in the lowlands. So I've progressed a few rounds on here and bumped into some different tiles. So the first one is this one here that will simply allow you to draw a new quest from the deck. You have these wagons that look like this, where you will reveal the next card from the wagon deck, which will give you a bunch of different things, such as getting resources. So in this example, I'll get a free piece of bread. You'll find other villagers, and you will find these little bandits that are hiding in the woods as well, which will actually steal your most valuable resource from you. Now, something I should have said earlier is that when you visit one of the villages, you will place one of your huts on it to show that you have already visited that village. And that's important, and it stops you from going back and forth to keep on buying resources. However, if you end up venturing into the highlands and selling that particular resource, or sorry, any resource, then all of the huts will come off any village that you visited before, meaning that you can visit them again. So let's take a look at what you might find in the mountains. So the mountains are a bit more difficult to traverse through. Whilst you have got still the standard pathways, you will be spending a lot of your time when you discover tiles finding these little mountain peaks that you cannot travel through. It's impassable terrain, meaning, again, it's going to take you a bit more time to suss out where you can go. You might find dead ends, and you might find complete barricades and will present themselves to you, meaning you have to, again, move around. However, there are some different things that may pop up, such as the caves. The caves allow you to move from one to another with a single movement point, and as you can imagine, as more caves pop up, you might be able to go all the way across the mountain range there. You also have these mines. When you reveal one of those mine tiles, that player will get the chance to roll the gem die, and they'll be able to take a number of gems from the supply depending on what they rolled, and that corresponds to the dwarven village, because if you end up having gems in your supply, going to the dwarven village, which is normally hard to find because it's only one of them in the entire stack of those hexes, then you will have a chance to sell those gems for 5 bronze each. They're very valuable, because it's going to be an all or nothing style strategy. Additionally, when you visit the dwarven village, you'll have the chance to obtain one of the special items, first come, first served on these. You've got the climbing equipment, which will actually allow you to pass through the mountain peaks. You've got the shield that prevents you from getting robbed by thieves. You've got the horse that adds 1 to your die roll. And you've also got the backpack that allows you to carry 7 of each resource rather than the standard 5. And finally, in the highlands, you'll still find the tiles you found previously, such as new mission tiles, etc. But you'll also find the delivery villages that look like this. So each of these villages wants 2 types of kind of preferred goods. In this example, you've got the bread and the water. So if you remember, I ended up paying 10 coins for 5 water earlier. Here, because now this village wants the water, I can sell those for 3 each, meaning that I'm making a profit of 5 there. So that's how you are essentially going to get your money. Again, if you make it to the castle, providing that the dice will work in your favour and you've left yourself enough time, that any resources you have will sell for the maximum price here and end up getting you some additional points. But of course, it is a push of the luck, because the game is quite well balanced in terms of how long things take and how quick it's going to take you to get to the castle before the time runs out. So you may want to cash in before you get to the castle, because you might not even make it there in the first place. And that's essentially how the game works. The player with the most points at the end of the game will be the winner. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on Merchants Quests. Now, as you can see, this game is a roll and move game, and I think instantly that is going to deter quite a few players, but I have to say it works really well for this game, and that is because the timing of rolling the dice and weighing up the averages and what you can possibly do in contradiction with the time track, it's really interesting, because again, you do need to allow yourself time to get what you want done, and there are different ways you can approach the game as well. Do you want to kind of meander around the part here, collect all the goods that you want, load up with the hope of pushing through the mountains and then maybe going straight to the castle? Or do you want to find a settlement and go back and forth as much as you can? Do you want to go make a beeline straight for the mountains, find all those gem mines before anybody else does, then go searching for the dwarven city, completely get your money that way, and then make a beeline for the castle? Or do you want to take a nice mixed approach of all of them? And the fact that you are subject to the dice rolls makes it a lot more interesting, because again, you are always against that ticking clock. Can you get everything you want done before that turn counter moves right to the bottom? I think this game does a fantastic job of kind of bridging the gap between older, more traditional games you may have played as a child and more modern kind of Euro-style games, because, yeah, you have got the roll and move, but you have got that kind of resource management. You have got some decisions in terms of how you want to, progress with the game. Do you want to sit back and let other players pave the routes for you and then piggyback off their efforts, or do you want to again take that chance, potentially get robbed, or potentially find a literal gold mine there? So I do like the fact, especially with the mountains, that if people are really pushing on and ignoring the first part of the game, you can kind of lay up or follow up in their footsteps and use their already established routes without wasting your movement discovering all of those mountain peaks. I think the game does a good job of bringing forward that feeling of adventure, because it always feels good when you reveal these tiles, when you step into a new one. Are you going to get robbed? And that fear is there, but at the same time, that risk and reward factor does shine through. And going back to the roll and move style part of the game, even a lot of the times when you are rolling high, that is somewhat going to get mitigated, because if you do want to stop at certain spots, again, like the quest, the villages and things, that's going to end your turn anyway. So again, that is going to somewhat even things out as the game goes on, and you're not going to keep on getting massive benefits by rolling higher in opposition to, say, your opponent rolling low all the time. Of course, that is going to hurt you if you are moving slow, but I think the game has enough time for that to even itself out, unless you are incredibly hard done by. The player interaction in general is fairly low in this game. I did mention earlier about the option of piggybacking off other people's efforts. That does come through quite a lot and happens a lot in this game. But mostly you'll be focusing on what you're doing by yourself, establishing your own trade routes and focusing on what you're doing. And there are some little things you can do by blocking certain spots, by parking on there and stuff, but it is still fairly low in general. There are some cards that might mix that up a little bit, such as I mentioned earlier with this quest here that says be the first player to enter the castle, and several players might have this card, which again could bring a little bit more tension into the game. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Merchant's Quest. And again, I want to stress that this is a prototype copy. I'm sure some of the imagery will be changed up a little bit. Hence why I didn't want to comment too much on the production quality here. The copy I have here is lovely, but I'm sure it's going to be different to what it's going to look like finally, if only better. But all in all, this game is actually, it works way better than I thought it would do. This game oozes charm. And as I said, it bridges that gap between older style games and newer games exceptionally well. The roll and move actually complements the gameplay quite a lot. The fact that that ties in so well with that round counter brings through a lot of tension, and when you manage to pull off everything you want to with just a round or two to go, it feels really good. And it does have that kind of gambling effort. Are you going to have a whole wagon full of goods and you're going to die right on the border before you get to the castle, or are you going to play it a bit safer and visit these preferred villages and offload your goods altogether? Sometimes you might even be tempted to sell unwanted goods at these locations just to increase your cash flow so that you can continue with what you're doing. And because sometimes finding those preferred villages just might not be an option because you just cannot discover it. But all in all, it's a lot of fun. Everybody I've played this game with has left with a big smile on their face, because again, it's hard not to be charmed with this game. It doesn't outstay its welcome at all. When we played a 3-player game of this in about 40 minutes, which feels right on the money for me. And if you have, say, a younger family and you want to start introducing them to some Euro-style mechanisms, again, bridging that gap with those older roll and move style mechanisms, then this is like the perfect option, because you've got that supply and demand thing going on, and you've got that risk management thing going on as well. And you know what? I am actually really intrigued about what you could potentially do with this simple system. You could add so many little modules and little bonus tiles you could throw into the mix just to spice the game up. My mind is really running away with me when it comes to that, and I hope that the game does well, because I want to see what else this can bring. But as it stands, I think it's lovely. I think that if you are into heavier games and you play with exclusive, hardcore gamers, then this probably isn't going to be one for you long term. You might want to give it a go as a novelty. But again, if you are a more family orientated gamer, then I think you're going to be charmed with Merchant's Quest. So again, the Kickstarter is launching at the end of this month, so be sure to check that one out. So that's Merchant's Quest by KIENDA Games.